situation at Pearl where we don't have access to everything all the time. When things are in season or coming up, we're that elated about them as well. So influencing for sure, but also just out of necessity because it's the only thing that we can use. And then also just like a side note as well, I think there are challenges, less so for the fine dining restaurant because the portions are much smaller and they don't see the volume that we see at the Bakehouse. But it's really, really hard to work within those restrictions at a bakery when you're serving maybe 600 to 800 people a day. If someone wanted, a few thousand cinnamon buns, I can just order more cinnamon and bring it up in a conventional bakery. But for us, that would be going to find the plant and then dehydrating the plant and then putting it through a blitzer to make it into a powder. So there are upper limits to what we can do with certain ingredients. And I think that that's a good thing in some ways because it makes you appreciate them that much more. But from a business side, lots to talk about there. No, not that many rabbits.
Yeah, sustainability. I think that's very important to talk about, especially for dessert trends. I think like what you said, a lot of restaurants lately are trying to use every component of, let's say, a vegetable or fruit to maximize the aspects of like using that in a dessert menu or even in the whole menu itself, right? So in the winery, it's always a topic of conversation. Can we maximize the use of this vegetable? Every part of it, the seeds, the skin, the flesh, everything, for fruits, for meat, for everything, right? We basically try not to throw anything, unless it's not usable, of course. But I think when it comes to dessert trends, sustainability would be also like a really good topic to talk about.
I think actually one thing that, kind of springboarding off of what both of my colleagues here have said, one thing that we're starting to see more and more of is kind of a middle ground on using sustainable ingredients, even leaning into more kind of like local flours and things like that. And what I mean by that is I think 10 or 15 years ago, like I would say my generation at 47 of chefs, we came at kind of restaurant visions and menu visions and bakery visions very dogmatically, not maybe dissimilar to Pearl Morissette without the knowledge and the assets that they have. And I think as a result, if I'm totally transparent, there was a lot of less than exceptional products being created and served, hanging on to that dogma, like this has to be 100% whole grain, or I'm only going to use this inferior local product where I could get probably a superior, not so local product. And I think what I'm seeing more and more now is that we've reached a middle ground in a lot of bakeries where people are really interested in introducing flavors of fresh, locally milled flours and things like that. But at the same time, they recognize, hey, but texturally, I can really nail a whole wheat croissant if I'm using a blend of like 50% run-of-the-mill, high-quality, high-gluten flour, coupled with 50% red fife. And I think that just that idea that you don't have to be so dogmatic and that you can introduce things incrementally, and that now you're able to get away from products that maybe don't have ideal textures and ideal things like that. And I think chefs are doing a really good job now of finding that middle ground of how can I incorporate some of these more sustainable local trends, but at the same time be able to, number one, produce them in volume, and number two, be able to still match traditional textures and things like that was lost for a little bit, I think, in my own opinion.
I went to school a culinary school in California, and it was sort of the beginning of the whole California cuisine, chez panisse, and I had one of my pastry instructors was a part-time pastry chef at chez panisse. So I've always thought, and when I was working, I always thought, yeah, we're going to use things in season, and I didn't use many everything was kind of fresh, and and fresh fruit. You could call it sustainable, hopefully local. But also, I worked with, when Scaramouche first opened, Jamie Kennedy and Michael Statlander were the chefs, and Jamie has never veered from that whole local, sustainable concept, nor Michael. And I remember it was beautiful. They had a shelf, they would make a shelf of preserves. So they took, you know, the summer fruit, made preserves out of it, and then, you know, in the winter they could use it in the desserts. And Michael had a pot of, he made rum top, right, with all the summer fruit. Put it in this crock, sitting in the fridge, and, you know, using that in the winter time. So I think the concept started a long time ago, and I'm thinking now, you know, it kind of become buzzwords, but hopefully not just buzzwords, like people are really paying attention. And going back to my two friends who are the whole grain bakers, they actually they have small mills in their bakeries, and they're milling their own grains. So it's really, you know, fresh, and I'm assuming they're buying from Canadian wheat growers and that sort of thing. So it's quite inspiring.